my language.
We won't use that. That's okay. Did you see Steve's Daily Dirt had a thing about F-bombs that I was able to incorporate you in today?
I haven't had a chance to look at anything.
Yeah, so Illinois and the folks in
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
The folks in Illinois
Okay, thank you.
and Missouri tend to use the F-bombs. They're in the top 10 states of people who use F-bombs.
Yeah, it's like a part of our regular vocabulary.
Mm-hmm. And so is West Virginia, which I thought was weird. Because
have you ever seen this? There's a documentary called The Wild Whites of West Virginia or something like that. It's interesting. You should watch it.
But it's almost heaven, so I wouldn't know why they would be swearing all the time.
What is West Virginia?
Almost heaven. That's what John Denver said anyway. Yeah. Yeah. See? I played that this morning while I was working. I was
really?
Like, yeah,
it's a great song.
And I also put the YouTube, did the YouTube in Steve's column this
Do you think
morning.
how I just did the was it pretty?
Wasn't close.
No.
But that's okay.
See, because every time I'm like, Luke,
I still
what's
don't know what you're
this song? He's like, I probably would know if somebody else were humming it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm
Yeah.
tone deaf, I think, but I like to think I can sing. I like to think I can dance.
I can't.
It's all a lie.
You dance like Elaine?
Not quite as bad, but pretty damn close.
Okay.
It's almost like just a free spirit type thing. Like I get out there and kind of interpretational dance, and people join me. People join me dancing because they see how much fun I'm having.
You are.
That's
It's all about joy.
It is.
It is.
It is.
Like in the presidential campaign. It's all about
Correct.
joy and not a
That's what I would relate it
and not a dystopian vision of the future.
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
I think that thing is a garbage fire. I mean, I just think it's just a huge dumpster fire. It's very embarrassing, I think, to be a part of our current political environment.
In any way, shape, or form.
In any way, shape,
Except
or form.
at the local level, we have good people running for office, right?
We do. It's very the spectrum is very broad, right? I mean, you have to like someone, and if you don't, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I think you would agree with at least some parts of someone, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But Brittany was one of the youngest people at Linda Moore's announcement on Monday.
Oh, I wasn't the
Youngest?
youngest.
I said one of the. Roll the tape back. I said one of the. It was a rather mature crowd. And again, I think she's very competent. I think she's smart. That's not real. She's smart as hell. I think she'd do a great job, and I think we might have a real race depending on what happens in the primary and such. So, and again, I have long supported the idea of the nonpartisan election, as you ladies were discussing on Coffee Talk, and I'll just leave it at that. But also in the fact that in the nonpartisan election, the problem is the party that's in power never wants it, and the parties that out of power always wants it, because they weren't talking about this back when Chuck Schultz was mayor and the Democrats had a 10-4 majority. It wasn't discussed then. But now that the Republicans have held a solid hold on the city council and the governor's office for 4 terms now, three terms now, 2 for Kyle and 1 for Mike Trope. So yeah, now that they've had it and had council control for even before that, because they got control of the council under Democrat John Spring, now the tables have turned. So, but it's always
you're talking about
been a good idea.
They don't like the independent candidate.
The party in power wants to continue to have partisan elections, is what I'm saying.
Duh.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, duh.
So and you looking across Illinois, downstate Illinois, most of the cities that are our size or larger have nonpartisan municipal elections, such as Peoria, Springfield.
I have a question.
Yes.
How much of our local government is influenced by donors to these particular parties?
Well, back when Mike Madigan, had this iron fist on the Illinois Democratic Party, a lot of money flowed in for Democratic candidates through Mike Madigan and also through
Quincy
and also through Dick Durbin, to be fair. So at one time there was a lot of that happened. That doesn't happen so much anymore.
Don't think so?
No.
What about flowing the other way?
No, Republicans, the local Republicans, Harold Knapide, God bless his soul, when he was alive, was the primary donor for the local Republican Party, and there were others as well. That has not, since Harold died a few years ago, that has not been as much. I know his son Bo and his wife Ann have supported other candidates. They supported the current mayor last time around, but those funds have not been nearly as prevalent as they used to be.
So what do you think is it just a comfort blanket, the party system, or is it just you know what I mean? It's like a wubby.
Yeah, it's like, what is the point at this
What's the
There's no point. Again, the old saying was there's no Democrat or Republican way to fix a pothole, and we know potholes are a problem here in town.
It's not the only thing, though. So when you're talking about, and while I do appreciate Linda's, she came out of the gate with the pothole thing, which I think is, of course, an issue that everybody can run on because it is something that everybody talks about. But is it the biggest problem? Probably not. So let's look at actual issues facing our community and how we can benefit as a whole from it. Potholes, yeah. I think there are probably some bigger fish to fry. But I'm just curious of why, outside of maintaining the status quo, why would you want to continue on a partisan basis if you know that it's not doing anything but dividing, which is the case on a national level, a state level, everywhere?
But if you're an active member of a party, you like it because it's your party and you supposedly believe in the platforms of your party.
But my question is, if the platforms of your party don't really come into play every week at a city council, what is your
they didn't used to, but they do now. I remember back when, take case in point, back when I remember when Peggy Krim was running for treasurer as a Democrat and people were asking her about her stance on abortion, and she's like, yeah, I don't think that's ever going to be a matter here at the city council. It does now. We had sanctuary city crap come out.
That got shut
but
down.
It still came up. And
even so, don't you think that you can have that? You can still have those thoughts and you can still have your moral compass based on those issues, but you shouldn't run on it, nor should you feel like you're going to get influenced by other people in that party. So if I run again, right, and I lean Republican, if I ever ran for alderman, if people came to me, if the Republican, if the group of Republican aldermen came to me and they were like, well, you ran on this like an intimidation thing, which I think is one of the bases for continuing partisanship. It's like, well, here's how you ran. It's almost an intimidation factor of you have to vote this way because this is how you ran.
The intimidation of a gang and the comfort of a gang.
Right? So it's like, I belong, but only as long as I'm doing what they want me to do. Then it's like then it becomes almost just nonsensical and a lot of noise.
But it used to be we could agree to disagree on certain issues.
That ship sailed.
And we would always want to work for the common good.
No.
And that's just not the case anymore.
No.
Yeah, no.
It's so unfortunate. Do you think we could get back there if we were...
If we had candidates who would espouse those views.
Yeah.
What views?
The views of, hey,
we're here for the people.
Look,
not your party.
We want to do what's best. We're not going to agree on everything, but let's try to agree on most things so we can move forward.
So as far as Linda goes, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot, but no, it's, drinks. But okay.
Hashtag drinks.
Linda, a lot of people are, of course, going to look at, she's a lady, right? She ran on, like she was kind of, I don't know how the things came down, but Peggy Krim, she was going to take over, right?
As a Democrat.
So, right, as a Democrat. She's running as an independent. I think there have been a lot of comments about don't let her fool you, quote unquote. I think it's possible that you can change your viewpoints on something and not have to stick to your, right?
Yes, but also when you look at it, yes, Peggy Krim was a Democrat. The Adams County Democratic Central Committee appointed Linda to take her place, and then Linda ran as a Democrat because that's what she had to do.
Right.
And now she's decided she wants to run at this, primarily because she knows a Democrat probably can't win, but she has an outside shot as an independent. And
she's also running on policy over
she
party.
Is.
That was like
yes, but you also have another case in town when you have the gentleman who took her place, in Kelly Stupavsky, who is
love him, by the way.
I know you're related to him, like 48 or 58.
So what? I can still love him.
I do. I love him too.
Yeah,
Great guy.
He's a great
good
guy.
friend of mine. He is not a Republican. His views are pretty progressive, but he is the best person for that job because he's been in banking for 30 some odd years and he knows his shit. So I'm hoping that Linda running as an independent paves the way for him to run as an independent because that's where he's going to be most comfortable because he's not really a political guy. He's a bank guy. He's a money guy. But you know that the Republican Party is going to find some right-wing guy or gal who's going to come in and it's going to be like...
How long was she treasurer?
6 years.
Okay. She worked for ESPN, Disney. She knows her stuff. She's very vocal, strong-minded. I think that's somewhat... And this is not an endorsement. I'm just saying I like the fact that she's putting her name in the hat because it's impressive that you know how the city works. You know how city council works. You know how bigger corporations work. You know how to run a business. You know how to run a quote-unquote gang, right? I mean, I'm not saying, but you know how to make things happen. And you also know how to, just get things done. And I think that's important.
But the other two candidates also obviously have a familiarity with government. Trope's been mayor the last 4 years. Dan Brink was an alderman for a long time, and now he's running again. So these guys also know how city government works and think they can, and at least Alderman in Dan Brink's case, he thinks he can reach across the aisle, work with central services, do all this stuff. Yeah. He thinks he...
And I really like Dan Brink, and I
can
really
do that too.
So just...
Mike Trope can look at his economic development record and the things that have come into town, which many people have supported, but some people don't. Because, again, some people are like, Quincy first, let's not bring in this outside money, let's let local people develop.
Also, real quick, just to add to that, I question, when you say economic development and he brought this into town, does he get to essentially take credit?
Some things he did, let's be honest. Target was like... He helped nudge Target across the finish line. Target was mostly here, almost done deal. Mike was able to kind of jump on it. He was like the fourth man in a relay race since we just had the Olympics. He was like the anchor of the relay. He got to carry the baton across. He got to break the tape.
Part of the team.
Got to break the tape.
Yeah.
But some of the other things that have come about, he has been the mayor, but he has also worked with Greta, and he's also worked with the county to make all this happen. So no, it's never you're never going to get all the credit for the successes or all the blame for. Sometimes you get too much credit for successes and too much blame for failures.
So what are your thoughts on? Brittany brought up a across the board debate before the primary.
He's saying this is a political advisor. No, it would never happen. No. But I'm saying for
could it and should it
of Quincy,
if you rely on your leader,
no.
If we eliminated primaries, don't you think?
But we haven't. We have primaries.
But hang on.
Wouldn't it be better for the citizens of Quincy to just be able to hear?
Not coming from a political advisor.
Nobody does that. It doesn't happen. If we were nonpartisan, yes, we're not nonpartisan. You get us nonpartisan first, and they're all
I want your personal opinion.
I'm going to get
not on a political advisor.
No.
So when you as a voter in a community that needs someone to step up who's truly going to lead, and I'm not saying nobody has in the past, wouldn't you want to know policies, where they stand? And that's across the board, because you can say that I'm for a party, but that doesn't mean that I'm voting the same way on every policy. That doesn't mean that I think every policy is important. You don't think that that's...
You might think we have say you've got the college football playoff, and I think the Missouri Tigers...
They're wrong analogy. Wrong analogy, fool.
Stop.
Okay.
In the college football playoff, you got Mizzou here, and you got Alabama here, and I think they should automatically play, which they're going to play on October 26th, and I'll be there. But you still have to go through the playoff. So right now, we have an independent, and we have two Republicans. We have to have the playoff.
Sports is a little different than politics.
Totally the same thing.
No, it's not.
Sports and politics are totally the same
Okay,
thing.
well, I think that's...
Maybe now on this level, and that's the problem.
That's great. If it's nonpartisan, then throw them all out there.
I wonder...
And have ranked choice voting to where, say we had a primary, say you have a primary where you have 5 people run for mayor, you let them all debate, and then the final 2 in the general election, and then you have another one.
Yes, that's how it should go.
That's how it should go.
That's how it should go.
That would be great. Not the system we have now. Can't do it.
So how do we get to that system?
I believe your city council and alderman or mayor and city council would have to back that. I believe it would have to be a 75% vote on the
Approval?
city council to put it on the ballot, or a citizen referendum could put it on the ballot, because that's what they did with the county board
Ooh.
back in the day.
I like
Stop.
it.
Just stop. Just stop. The county board at one time was 28 members, and the League of Women Voters led a citizen initiative to put it on the ballot to reduce it to 21 members, and it got reduced. This was 20 some odd years ago. So
what you're saying is there's a chance.
yes, Jim.
Listen,
Carrey, there's a
I
chance.
think that times have definitely changed, and it is a possibility as long as everyone knows what options are out there. And I think, again, status quo has been in place for so long that people are just either too busy, too who cares, whatever it is, they just keep going along with it. And then I'm not saying no real change is made, but there could be something put in place that instates some good stuff, right? So maybe we look at other options.
But again, in our current system, we have the independent who had, and she had to get more signatures and did all that and everything. Let me ask,
Because she's required how many signatures?
to get more signatures. I don't
About
know.
500
As
to the
50
50.
that you have to have as a
it's-
partisan?
it's total
Okay,
crap.
yeah,
I get
it's
it.
bullshit.
crap.
It's bullshit.
It
Yeah.
is. Independents are screwed by the parties.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something. Linda Moore, what? And again, former Mayor Chuck Schultz, who's a Democrat and is one of her big supporters. Say she gets say Dick Durbin and J.B. Pritzker wanted her to write checks. Should she accept those checks?
Wait, write or
Wait,
receive?
she's
Give-
writing.
No, they would give her checks. They would say, Linda, we think you're going to be great. And each of them say, here's $5,000. Should she take that money?
No.
I was asking her first
Sorry. Sorry, I didn't.
because you talk too much.
Sorry.
Yeah, no.
Okay, and you're saying no too.
No, I don't. I think on a state level, they should work for us. And when you invest in them, that makes you their employee.
But if if she were running as a Democrat, you'd be okay with her taking their checks.
No. I don't think
I don't think state level.
I
should
don't
get
think
involved
state
in this.
should be involved in local because
that's
then
the way it's been in the. Like I said, Madigan
I don't
and
like
Durbin
that.
and these
I don't
people
like it.
used to always
Ew.
give
I
I don't like
to
it
local
because then
Democrats.
because then
Ew,
they're
Bobby.
buying
Ew.
because they're buying votes or they're buying cooperation. When Illinois is a shithole, maybe Quincy could be better if Illinois weren't in our pockets. That's what I
Because
think.
it also would be like
Amen.
then
Right?
friends of Mike Madigan and Mike McLean would have people write local candidates
want
checks.
association with them either.
People who owned parking garages in Chicago would write checks. But then
Filthy,
you'd also,
dirty,
you'd also
dirty,
have
filthy.
Republicans for who didn't necessarily live here also give Republican checks, like Darren LaHood used to, and Aaron Schock used to give Kyle Moore money. Back
I
in the day.
think if you want my honest opinion, I think if you are running for local office, you should be supported locally and only locally. That's what I think. I don't know if it's doable. I don't know if it creates any less issue, but I think you have to run on what's important to your community and not what's important to your state level. But I think state should always support local because it does, right? What's the favorite saying? When all
Rising tide lifts all
there you
boats.
go, right? So if you're a city in a state and you're doing well, you're going to raise Illinois, right? We don't need people determining our policies locally, nor do we need them telling us that we have to be a sanctuary city. And how do you erase that? By
Get
not
rid of-
taking their freaking influential money.
But we want
Part
their
of it.
money if we
No.
want things done like bridges
Well,
and fixing the
infrastructure
bay.
stuff.
Okay.
That shouldn't depend on how much they support.
Okay.
That we earned that by being one of their children, right? I don't want to pay for my kids' stuff all the time either, but guess what? It's my job.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I relate
Fair.
to that.
That's very fair.
Sorry.
But
Also,
get very
and how cool
emotional
would it
about
be if we are the one that takes away?
Pioneer, baby.
Yep, Pioneer City.
We can.
You want
do it.
tourism? Oh,
We
let's
do.
visit Quincy. Let's visit Quincy and see how it is operating in its nonpartisan existence.
I think maybe we should try.
like I
it.
said, but again, we are the
We would
outlier.
be a politic sanctuary city.
No, we are an outlier as we are now because, as I said, most of the other downstate cities are nonpartisan. So we need to get with the program and join these other towns.
Hello. Yeah. So you're agreeing.
We're pioneering shit. We're behind other people.
Oh, listen
So,
to this.
and we
I think
also
that's the
need
first step.
to.
That's the first step
But if-
because we're so.
But if you
behind the
also
times.
were to bring in a real professional city manager and let your mayor be more of a baby kisser handshaker, that would probably help as well. But when you have good quality candidates running for mayor, that's great. It hasn't always been the case. But here we have 3 people who are qualified. But again, a lot of these mayors in Springfield and Peoria, they don't make crap. They're part-time jobs. They have real jobs on top of what they're doing. And the city council will dictate tempo to the city manager and things like that. So again, there's a lot of ways to skin this cat. Currently, we're stuck in this old partisan hackery system that it would be best if we were to get rid of. And again, I would support the effort. I am not going to do anything that would lead a charge to turn that over.
A coup.
I am not going to I'm not going to do the petition drive. I'm not going to do that. But I think it's something that should
there as
be
an option.
absolutely.
Yes.
It's something that I think would be great.
And let people know how to achieve it. Because right now, when you have a 2-party system, it's unlikely that 2-party system is going to come forth with, hey, here's how we make it nonpartisan. So you have to have somebody to throw out the FYI, it can happen, and here's how it happens. And I think that everyone deserves to understand that process should they want to. And I think it's kind of hidden right now because of the current system. So that's where I stand.
So I'm not going to stop anyone who might want to take up this charge.
I'll buy a beer to the person that takes up the charge.
A beer.
I drink Michelob Ultra. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, I think it's a great idea. And again, listen, just for everybody who's on city council, who's partisan or nonpartisan, Linda, Mike, Dan, I think it's very awesome that you give a shit about your community enough to throw your hat in the ring and to be in these high pressure positions. I have the utmost respect for you. That being said, there's always a way to improve. And if we're not improving, we're moving backwards. And I think especially in today's fast-paced world, we have to look at other strategies. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So yeah, kudos to all of you. But let's continue moving forward because Quincy deserves it. The community deserves it. Muddy River News will always be here to report on that.
Well, and when they do have a debate, obviously, when the League of Women Voters always has their debates, and who knows, maybe they are going to try to have a debate with all 3. And if they do, great.
It was my idea.
Yeah.
That's great. Let them do it. And we'll see what happens, and we'll see if the other guys show up, and we'll cover it. And I think it'd be, I think it'd be a neat thing. But again, if I were running a political campaign or I were involved in any way, shape, or form, I would say you're crazy. No, we got to play this out.
Yeah.
And again, I would, again, if I was running in a Republican primary, I wouldn't even be acknowledging the other person. I'd be saying, we got to win.
Okay, Mr. Politics.
We got to win this.
Politics.
We've got to win this.
When you're deep-seated in politics, you kind of fall into the status quo. So you have to look to...
That's me, Mr. Status Quo.
No, you're not. No. But you have to look to what does the future hold and how can we do things differently? And speaking of future holding, right? So our guest...
Segway queen.
I'm not a segue queen, but this is what I've been thinking of because...
Mashed it.
Well, she's not only a new Muddy Buddy, but she is someone who can bring a fresh vision, new ideas, a breath of fresh air, if you will, to not only Muddy River News, but also to just ideologies, right? How do we continue to improve?
Friends with my kid, and that just makes me feel really old, but that's okay.
We are old, dude. That's what's so awesome about this. It's a breath of fresh air.
But again, yes, I think it is. I think it's important to bring as much diversity as we can, especially among ages and sexes here, and race, color, creed, all that stuff. So
and
I think it's
was the youngest one at that.
She was the youngest one.
And then, so at this 3-person debate, I'm gonna make her hold the camera next time.
Well, they won't let me ask questions. I'm sure they want David to ask the questions probably if I had to guess, but if they even ask us at all. So, but anyway, yeah, because it was funny because when you said status quo, I don't think Muddy River is one thing you're never going to call Muddy River status quo. Yes. I really don't think so. No. Even though I mean some people. No.
Choose to not be.
Yeah, we're not status quo.
Status quo.
No SQs here, baby.
No.
Cheers.
No squares. So we'll be right back.
The Liquor Booth is your home for a huge selection of beer, wine, and spirits. The Liquor Booth has 2 locations in Quincy, 3520 Broadway and 1500 North 12th Street. The Liquor Booth, where it's always happy hour.
A&B Properties is Quincy's largest apartment rental company with hundreds of units available. They offer short-term and long-term rentals with 1 up to 4 bedroom apartments. A&B Properties meets the needs of its tenants with care, compassion, and a quality of service that exceeds expectations. A&B Properties also has a convenient tenant app for you to do your payments or make repair requests. Give them a call today. A&B Properties, 217-919-8080, Quincy.
You want to put it back up?
I think it got electrocuted a little bit. But
Well, we're rolling, so.
oh, we are?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Heck yeah, we're rolling.
Okay, well,
no
I'm
doubt
sure.
about it.
Aspen Gengenbacher, new Muddy Buddy. Woo, 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 woo. All right, welcome, Aspen. So let's go ahead and do these pickles real quick. I feel like we should have done these before. Cheers. You guys go first. I'll keep talking. So Aspen is, like I said, a new Muddy Buddy, and really excited to have her here, not only because she's a new member, but she's going to bring like a new vision, I think, to Muddy River News, which is
She
really
is
freaking
not
cool.
liking the pickle.
Not a fan.
I'll come back to it maybe in a second.
We'll revisit. We'll revisit.
We'll revisit it.
So, Aspen, welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Your hair looks amazing.
Thank you.
You look amazing.
You do. You do.
You guys
So-
are nice to me.
Do you mind if I ask you, and if this is a ding next subject?
Yeah, you can
that's
always
fine.
ding with us.
Okay.
How old are you?
I'm 25.
25. All right. You
If
take
you ask
it
my
'cause I'm
mom,
gonna
she
do a shot.
says 26, and I'm like,
Stop
we've
aging
got
me,
we've got a
Mom.
few months still. It's kind of rude of you to just
So she's wrong.
say
She-
that I'm 26.
Well, so I think because when you're a mom and you have a child who's so close to that age, you're like, you hold them to that age standard.
Mm-hmm.
So my 14-year-old, she was 13 plus 9 months. And I was like, well, you're basically 14, so you got to get your shit together. Right?
Yeah.
Because you hold them to that standard of the next age, which really doesn't mean anything anyway, I think. What it does mean, not only for, our socioeconomical viewpoints, but also for Muddy River News, it's like you have totally different views on things, which I'm really excited to dig into a little bit tonight. There are certain things that have always been that have recently changed because of a new generation. What generation are you from?
I think I'm like right on the millennial Gen Z
The cusp.
cusp.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that I'm technically Gen Z more.
Okay. So real quick, what are you doing for Muddy River News? Just a plethora of like everything? Or are you just like coming in and...
I think I'm going to be working more on feature-y type stories.
Okay.
Which is really exciting because I think any other experience that I've had, it's been very rigid. And like when I was in Columbia, I was on the higher education beat. And so that was like a very kind of, there just wasn't a lot of like super fun, interesting.
Not
I
a
mean,
lot
it was
of
like
flexibility.
interesting in its own way, but
Talk a little bit
But-
about Columbia real quick. Like, so you came from?
yes. So I'm from Quincy, but I moved to Columbia in 2020, and that was weird moving during a pandemic.
Right.
Not recommend.
What did you move for?
I went to school at Mizzou. It was kind of stupid of me because did not even realize how big of a journalism school it was.
It's
When I
apparently
decided- it's
the
like-
biggest,
it's literally,
according to
yeah.
Bob.
Yeah. So I'm like already super hot. So the hair's going back up.
Go back up. So
I'm
real
going
quick-
to interject one
Yeah, I was gonna
moment
say,
and
we're
just
trying to
say
interject.
that yes, Aspen graduated from the world's oldest and finest journalism school, as did I.
Plug.
And yes, that helped, but I've known her since she was yay high and used to watch her play soccer and softball as a kid. Because she's not a kid anymore, and she's the same age as my daughter Michelle, and they chat and stuff. So, but again, I felt to bring her aboard because, again, we want to be diverse. We need to have more voices. And she mentioned the higher education beat, and she might be doing a little bit of that here, along with the feature-y type stuff that we're talking about. So.
Yeah. So very cool.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah, I love it. So you mentioned the pandemic, which we don't want to get super political because of course, everybody has different views and we don't want to put you in a hot seat, but I'm really curious to hear about your experience through COVID. I do know, Brittany and I were talking a little bit before about like what we're going to talk about. COVID is something that you were very vocal about. And I'm wondering like how that played into your experience with Mizzou, how that is still, how it influences your decisions today. So when you moved to college, when you went away to college, what was your experience with?
It was really weird at first because obviously journalism is you have to be around people, you have to talk to people, and it was kind of difficult to learn how to interview people when, you have to stand a certain amount of feet away from them.
Right.
It was
So going into it started like that.
Yeah. And it was also weird because a lot of my classmates, like I said, I started in fall of 2020, and it wasn't until like fall of 2021, maybe even spring of 2022, that I started getting to actually like see their faces. So I had been sitting in classes with these people for the longest time, and then when the masks came off, I was like, oh my gosh, you look
because the
like what I thought you were gonna look. Yeah.
The smile, right?
Yeah.
It makes you feel comfort. You're like, oh, okay, I judge people a lot on their facial expressions, genuine expressions. You can tell a lot if someone's being genuine or not based on their smile. So yeah, that's really, really interesting to me. Of course, I have my viewpoints on COVID and things that have happened. I wonder if your viewpoints have changed just from COVID then to COVID now. Do you still feel kind of the same way? Because I feel like it was very politicized. Do you agree? Okay.
For sure, yeah.
Do you think that played a part in the overall acceptance, or I guess not acceptance, right? Like,
I think overall, and this has just been a trend, I think, for decades, but we've really kind of veered towards this very individualistic mindset of, I do not have any responsibility to the people around me. I only need to care for and about myself, and I completely respect that for a lot of people. I think in my own life, I take that approach to a lot of things, but in my opinion, it was just a matter of caring for my neighbors, caring for the people around me, and I didn't find it difficult to do the things that we were being asked to do at the time. I completely understand and acknowledge that for some people it was a completely different scenario,
right.
And I don't want to invalidate those experiences at all. But for me, the precautions that I took were simple enough, and when I took those, it communicated to the people around me that, I do not know you, I cannot see you, but I want to do the minimum thing that I can do to keep you safe. And again, I know that a lot of people don't see it that way, but
I think from a perspective, though, of a young student, that is a good perspective.
Sure.
You aren't looking at anything other than the health of other people around you.
Sure.
I don't think you're taking in, the facts of people losing their jobs over it and their livelihood. Like your mentality is what you just said. I'm caring about people around me, and it did get politicized to the point where people, I lost my job. My husband was on the verge of losing his job over a vaccination that, now is being recalled. So
Right.
it's kind of crazy that, I don't know, it's all the different levels of perspective. You were young. I'm not saying you were wrong. You were right in the fact that the only way that you were kind of looking at this was, I'm just doing good for the next person next to me.
And I think that that's kind of where we've gone wrong as a nation is just because you look at it like this doesn't mean I have to hate you. It also doesn't mean I have to do what you do. And I think that goes both ways. And if I'm doing what I feel is right, who are you to say that I'm not? I do think that I think that there's a lot of, whether it was intended or not, the COVID, the pandemic was create a lot of divide, right? And I look at, I don't know if you've seen a lot of this, but I'm very conspiratorial minded, especially with big government. I feel like they kind of go in and stir the freaking pot and then back up and watch the shit hit the fan. I think COVID did just that, and whether it was a real thing or not, or maybe it was partially real or partially not, or who knows. But the biggest thing it did was divide people.
Which I think it's what the intention was.
And I don't know if it was or not. I think we definitely showed our asses as a human race.
Our true colors.
We did, by saying
Yes.
that you either agree with me or you don't. And I think that what you're saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not telling you how you should do it. This is what I'm doing because this is what I think is right. And if more people took that approach, I think we would be just fine. It doesn't end up like that most of the time because everybody's looking for their next podium to say what's on their mind. And I'm curious. So on to the next question, because I think that was a very well
real quick, I
formulated
want
response.
to butt in because
Sure.
it was that I noticed you got vocal. Is that where like you got into politics at all? Because you're obviously a little bit involved.
Yeah,
you know, a lot of it involved.
Yeah. So I do. When I went to school, I got a minor in political science. I was going to get a major, but then I would have been there for even longer. But
Good for you.
But I think that and just the way that the world has unfolded in the past few years, it's changed not necessarily my viewpoints, but it's changed the way that I've communicated those. Kind of how you were saying, a lot of people are just kind of shoving what they believe down other people's throats. And I 100% admit that I think that was my approach a lot of times a few years ago. But I think I realized that is just, at the very least, it's not going to get people to like you.
It's not productive.
No, and
It's not
at its worst, it's just creating this kind of environment that we're unable to talk to each other, and because we're only speaking, we're not engaging in conversation to understand the other person. We're just trying to talk at people and not necessarily be engaged in conversation and community building. We're just trying to, well, this is what I think, and
Be right.
yeah.
Everyone wants to be
So-
right.
That's the first step in everybody's step into politics, though, isn't it?
Yeah, okay,
like-
okay. So circle back to that. The very first thing that got me into politics was I was in high school, and it was actually abortion rights.
I kind of wondered that.
But I went to Notre Dame, and I had been brought up in a very conservative environment with my schooling. I went to church at least once a week, most of the time at least twice a week.
Sure.
So several times a week. So I was very, very pro-life. I started the pro-life club at the school. I don't know if it's still going, but a friend and I started that. I went to DC for the March for Life twice. So I was very, very pro-life, and that was the first thing that got me really interested in politics. And so when I was in high school, I was really, really conservative, and I was very outspoken about that. But I think I've always been willing to have an open mind, and as time went on, I really started questioning myself, not necessarily demanding answers from other people, but just asking myself, like, does this and this really make sense? Let's just think about this.
Are you aligning?
Is this
Yeah.
like, yeah.
That's growth.
Yeah.
So thank you. I've tried. But I think just always being willing to have an open mind and just being really curious, and also just kind of coming from an anthropological standpoint. I'm really interested in people, and I want to hear why they think the way that they do, and I think that kind of made me want to pursue journalism as well. I totally forgot my train.
No,
I lost
you're
my
good.
train of
I
thought.
think that was
just
a
rambling
fantastic.
and rambling.
No, that's a
So good.
fantastic answer. So, do you mind if I ask? So, pro-life. So, you started a club. Do you still follow the same thing, or are you more like to each their own? How do you feel about that?
So I think it literally just took me getting out of a Catholic school system to realize that it's not a black and white issue.
Thank you, sister.
And the way that it was.
You don't have to make a stance here. You do
No,
not
and
have to make a
it's-
stance. I was just curious about
Yeah.
how you're. So you definitely
such a
seem like you've
sensitive-
grown. So
Yeah.
have you grown in your understanding of maybe it's not black and white, and that's all you have to
Yeah.
say. You do not have to make a stand here.
Yeah, it's just the way that it had always been presented to me was as like,
is how it is.
if you get an abortion, like, you're not a good person.
You're not going to
Like,
heaven, sister. Yeah.
And that was really the way that I thought of it. And it wasn't until like I really kind of started questioning, like, is this really the way?
Did you start questioning in college?
Yeah, I took one sociology class, and it wasn't even that, like, someone was like, this is what you need to know, and like you can only think this about this certain issue. It was just like a realization that
Shit
I've
happens.
been in a bubble my entire
Do
life.
they have
and-
sociology at QND? they have a-
No, I don't think so. But I took it at John Wood. So
The first time I was introduced to any kind of class like that was in the public school system.
Yeah.
I remember.
yeah,
So,
and it's fascinating, and it's not even necessarily like this is what you should believe. It's just this is the information that's there, and
Do what you want with it.
Yeah, and that really kind of opened my eyes and made me realize that, you know, things are not as black and white, not on abortion, not on a billion other things
Yeah.
that are very political now, but
And it does start with family, which is
Mm-hmm.
so interesting because I think that, you know, your environment that you're brought up in definitely influences everything from how you spend money, how you save money, how you vote, how you believe in certain areas. And then when you get older, you kind of learn that, well, while I do love my parents and I do agree with a lot of their principles and a lot of their values, I may have some gray areas, so let me explore these on my own.
You've also had experiences outside of your parents, I think,
Right.
as you grow too. That I'm not saying that you're smarter than your parents
No,
ever,
no.
but like you have got
It's a
to
different world.
experience things
Yeah.
that they didn't get to experience. So, yeah, you're able to broaden your horizons. And also, just to add, just a funny thing, like when you're like about you do what your parents do. I didn't know that you couldn't eat steak with any kind of pink in it. Like I was brought up.
Oh, well
you-
done.
You cook it well done. And I'm
No.
working at Applebee's.
Shame.
I'm working at Applebee's for a really long time, and finally somebody asked me, like, they're like, "Do you want to share a steak?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And they're like, "How do you want it cooked?" "Well done." And they're like, "Oh, like
even a fillet.
gross." I had no idea.
Shame.
Aspen. So anyway,
Or shame.
Baby, we got to get you
This
a good
this
steak.
oh I
Bobby's
have,
got to.
I
Bobby
have.
wants to interject.
I
Bobby
have.
wants to interject.
Make you put ketchup on
no,
it too.
but I had to eat it with ketchup because it was so well done.
So dry.
But
You basically have to
so-
soak it in ketchup.
I had my first non-well done steak, and I was like, I thought you got sick when you ate. That's what they told me.
Right.
And the guy that I shared it with was like, you work at Applebee's. Like, you were asking how many. Like, how do you want this? Do you think we're just serving people
So I have to
six
tell
steaks?
you, I have to tell you this, and this is
So anyway,
hilarious,
my parents
but
were
not.
wrong.
But it goes to show you the influence. So my girlfriend, one of my best friends, and I won't go any further because you would know who she is. She was told when she was mushroom hunting with her dad that she couldn't go because her footsteps, her tiny little footsteps, would make them not pop out of the ground. And she thought that until just recently, and she's a little bit younger than me. So it's like you grow up thinking everything that I'm told is truth, right? What you're saying to me is truth. And that's how I live my life. That's how I make my decisions because you are superhero to me. You are the only truth.
Yeah.
And it's so wild that when you get older, you're like, my kids will probably know eventually that I'm just a dumbass making it through, right? Because when I was young, I would think, God, my parents I have to do. It's fearfully and lovingly obedient, right? And you think that they know the best. And then you get older and you're like,
Oh, they were
whoa,
just
whoa,
out here.
whoa.
They were just out here winging it.
I was-
winging it with me.
My gas'd have been flabbered, right? It's
Yeah.
like you don't even know. At that point, you're like, when the great awakening happens, and I think that's when you become old enough to realize that your parents don't really know shit, that they're going through this first time ever, as well. That you're like, I'm a full-blown adult, and now I have to make my own decisions, and that's scary, but it's also very freeing and very empowering. So I love the growth. I love what I think happens negatively in families and communities and nationally and state, blah, blah, blah. You think that because you're tied to something, whether you're parents or a party or something, that you have to agree with everything that they say. And if you don't, you're a traitor. Or if you don't, you're independent. You have to stand on your own haunches. And I think that if anybody can just talk freely about, I may not agree with everything, but I'm cool. You do you. Don't come at me because I don't agree with you, but maybe listen and understand a little differently. Because I think that, I'll shut up in just a second, but all of the opinions that everyone has, they're all correct based on their upbringing. They're all correct based on their outside influences. Everybody has and is welcome to a different opinion. It's when we have conversations and everybody comes to the table to throw out different ideas that shit gets solved. Right? That's what I think. Go.
What would be one thing that you think because your parents were first-time parents with you, so what's one thing that maybe, and not to put them on the spot.
Young parents too, right?
Yeah.
Kudos.
Yeah, nice job. You also did a great job with her and co-parenting too. They were like, you just had some great parents.
Yeah.
Okay, but
they're
tell
good
me
now,
one thing that they may have taught you that you're like, nope, you're wrong. It's not necessarily wrong, but you know.
Oh gosh, I would have to think. I would have to think.
All right, let's scroll back on
I'll
that.
come back
think
to
about
that, but
one other thing, what she was saying with the politics, and so right before this, we discussed a lot about party and how it plays in local politics. We're really on this bandwagon to try and get Quincy to try to maybe be nonpartisan locally, to every level, not just Quincy, but. What are your thoughts on partisan at the local level?
Well, I think the opportunity for independent candidates as opposed to left or right is much more accessible on a local level. I think on a larger scale, like if you look at the Kennedy candidate.
He's amazing.
But at that level, like
can...
it's just like the way that it is set up. It is the system is set up to squash any chance of a third party.
It's kind of like that locally.
Power,
just
money.
Real quick.
Yeah.
So like we were talking about Linda Moore is running as an independent. You were there. And you heard her say, so she has to get 500 as opposed to 50. And I mean, that's not as big as the national and Kennedy level, but it squashes.
It's still another like roadblock for an independent candidate. And
what are your thoughts though on the importance of having that R or that D behind your name at the local level?
I think that I hate the two-party system at every level, honestly.
I didn't say it, folks. I didn't say
it. It just, in a lot of other nations that are on the same level as we are, they have some party system, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't have any parties, but when you only have two main ones, like you don't give people a lot of options.
It's the black and white that you were just saying,
yeah,
and there is gray.
Yeah, and it's
ridiculous. Also, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's just not necessary, especially on a local level. And I don't even think it's necessary on a national level, but it's the dollars that flow in.
And I think too, if we had something like ranked choice voting at every level, that would be a huge help. But like I said, and I think school kind of made me a little bit cynical about this with learning about genuinely like how difficult it is for anyone that doesn't fall into left or right to have any chance at making any kind of impact. But like I said, I do think that it's more accessible at a local level. Like if you're an alderman or even a mayoral candidate, I think it's much more accessible. But on the national stage, it's just the way that it's set up. It's screwed.
It's a shit show.
It's truthfully,
okay, so I want to ask what you think about our national political system.
Oh gosh,
it's a loaded question.
Do we have more alcohol?
Hey, I'm just saying because I'll be forthcoming with you and not saying that you have to agree. I think it's a money grab. It's kind of on the local level, but on a grander scale. So I was listening to a podcast and we were talking about healthcare, and we'll get to that in just a second because I want to know your opinion. I think that what we're doing is bass backwards. It's like all this money flows into one party or another, and then nothing happens, and it's almost like it's almost like a sham of a system. So we're all kind of pawns to it, and nothing gets done, but we keep paying all this money, and we have shit healthcare, and nobody can get support. We have increased homelessness. We have lower education rates. It's like we pay all this money, and we struggle on a daily basis with mental health. And it's like, okay, can we not look at other countries who are doing it kind of better, right? And take a hint. But I think that we do it it's kind of, I hate to call it this because it's not the good old boy system, but this is what we've always done. So we're just going to keep doing it. But who's creating that vicious cycle? It's got to be the people who are making money, right? How do we stop that? I mean, I'm curious about your thoughts. You're definitely a different generation than me. So I'm curious to know if you have answers.
Well, I wouldn't say that I have any answers, but
thoughts.
I think, and I'm gonna throw the C word out there. We're in late stage capitalism, and capitalism is a fantastic thing, but I think it also allows for a lot of greed to kind of run rampant, and that bleeds into so many different sectors of healthcare and housing and so many other different things. And when you don't really have any kind of effective measures in place to check any of those really gigantically large companies, and anytime
we're talking like billions and billions and billions.
Yes, and a lot of times when like there's any criticism of capitalism or corporate greed or whatever, there's always like somebody that is like from a wealthier part of their town that gets all upset and starts defending the billionaires. And it's like, I'm not talking about you and how you make,
are you a billionaire?
300, maybe even $400,000 a year. That is still nothing compared to
that's pennies,
a
baby.
Billionaire. Yeah. So it's
funny because I feel like I know who she's talking about.
Well, I'm not even talking about anyone in specific,
I just hear
but just
it, like on the local level, like what you're saying. Like I hear that defense on the local level, and it's like what you just said. You're making like, $500,000 compared to what these people are making.
We're talking we're talking off the charts billionaires, right?
I'm not talking about like being able to buy a really nice house with a pool in the backyard. I'm talking about like money to be able to influence how elections go in
how babies are born in
second world countries, right? Or something. Like that's the kind of wealth that I'm discussing.
Or how elections are going
so
in our country.
This is what I feel like the two-party system has done. You either agree with us or you don't, right? So I think, and I was just listening to
gang,
baby, Theo Von. So Theo is, I think he leans conservatively, but he brings on every guest.
He's funny. I like
my favorite, right? So he brought on Bernie Sanders yesterday, or 2 days ago or whatever. And Bernie was talking about Bernie Sanders.
Oh, okay.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Right? They're at an impasse. But Theo asked questions that are very important to the general conversation. So they were talking about healthcare. Listen to this podcast, guys, because healthcare doesn't have to be what it is today. And that's where I differ from conservative versus liberal, because I think that healthcare is a right.
Yes, I agree.
Right? And I don't think that you have to go down the middle or do things. It is a freaking right.
Yep.
And when you are sick with cancer, the last thing you should have to worry about, bills. Mm-hmm. But and who owns all of that?
Or look at like
insurance companies.
Pharmaceutical companies.
Right?
Hate bringing up the accident that just happened locally, but
yes, God
I
bless.
saw, and yes, prayers to Jamie. I mean,
God, I can't.
It's a nightmare.
Sickening.
But I saw somebody say something nasty about her raising money, and it's like, do you not understand that when your child
see, that's the freaking downfall.
And you have if you have no insurance and no health care, obviously that is the first thing you think about, because what do I need to do?
The shame of a thing of
it's insane. I was very disgusted with the person that said this, because they said like the last thing I would think about is, and it's like, no, that should be the first thing that you think about, because that is what makes things go.
That's what you have to.
What do you want to, like, you're
you
going in there.
Go ahead, Aspen.
Yeah.
Well, and like I said, in high school, I was very conservative. I used to listen to the Ben Shapiro podcast every single day before school. And healthcare, I remember the specific episode that I was listening to about that. And the way that he framed it was like, if I were to go into a furniture store and I want to buy a couch.
It's a great
And
impression,
I say, I would like this couch. Give me this couch. And the furniture store employee is like, you cannot have that couch because you do not have the money to buy that couch. You cannot have the couch. And then several years later, like at the time I was like, this makes sense. Yeah. If you don't have the money to buy something, you can't have it. That makes, I think that
Duh,
makes sense.
if it's a luxury item.
But then like, people are not couches, and like you can't compare.
There's a
someone that
difference.
has no choice in getting cancer, and a lot of times, and unfortunately, in a lot of communities that are very impoverished, that again these large corporations will come into these smaller communities and wreak all sorts of environmental havoc that will later impact people's health care. That
And then
will
they're like this.
and
Hinkley.
also in, I mean, I would go off on a
Keep going,
entire
sister. I love
tangent,
this. I love it.
But about how these really large corporations, and even in some cases governments, how the way that they run their operations affects, like whether it's, I'm thinking specifically of a plant, like a chemical plant in, I
Manufacturing,
want to say that it was like a really, really small town in Mississippi or something that was a very, very impoverished community. And this plant, the impacts of that plant, like the waste from the plant would seep into the soil and it would get into people's water, and then they would drink that and they would breathe in the air, and they got sick. A lot of them got sick, and a lot of them died. And they don't have the money to pay for that.
Or to fight.
Yeah, and so it's things like that not only do people not have a choice to get sick, it's sometimes like these large people that are profiting off of people being sick, one, and large corporations that are profiting off of the things that are making people sick. And at the end of the day, it's never the people with a lot of money and a lot of influence that are paying the price for this. It's always poor people versus poor people. And
We're not even poor. Regular people who can't afford.
Yeah. And it's we're being told that our enemy is another person that is in a similar situation to us, and a lot of times in even worse situations than us. And we're being told that that is our enemy and not the person that is absolutely in control and that is absolutely making lots of money and that is absolutely laughing their asses off while everyone else is just fighting with each other and is too distracted to see the big picture and who the real enemy is.
And I think that...
And that's with a lot of different areas.
By the way. Thank you for your description. That's amazing.
My mind is blown.
No, I love it. So, but I
love it
think
too.
that what she said holds so much weight for so many people. But guess why we don't address it? Because we're so busy fighting about, well, that's communism, that's capitalism, that's, you know what it is? Humanism. And let's get down to the point and get rid of all these fucking people who are making this noise and making money, and get back down to, I want to take care of my neighbor. I want to take care of my
it circles
person.
back to that individualistic viewpoint. And again, like, for sure, that makes sense to apply that perspective to certain situations. But for the majority of situations, a lack of compassion and a lack of empathy never ends up creating anything good or productive. And so I think our inability to communicate, our inability to empathize with people and what they're going through, it bleeds into so many different things. So I think that is, if we can just maybe have a little bit more empathy, a little bit more understanding, I think that would be a much more fruitful way to spend our time.
I agree. I also think that, there are going to be a lot of people who watch this who are like, she's young. She doesn't know. I think
she
that,
knows.
Well, I think it's a new.
knows.
I think it's a new way to look at things. And again, we talked about status quo, and maybe there is a new way to look at things. And I think it's beautiful to consider humanity first.
And I like that she just has the overall, you just said the young thing, but you still have.
I mean, I don't
the
mean
big
young
picture.
because she's just, but she's she's not.
No, you can say I'm young.
Tainted.
I'm
No,
not saying that,
okay,
saying
so
that I'm
She's
26.
not
You can
tainted
say
by
I'm young.
the cynicism of the bullshit system that we've been, privy to. So it's like
And my clientele is mostly like her age, and
Yeah.
I promise you that none of them are thinking on this level. So
So we're gonna have to come back again, but just for the simple, just put it in your pipe and smoke it a little bit. That healthcare doesn't have to be as expensive as it is.
And if
do
you-
some research, listen to some podcasts,
we
open
took
your
away
mind.
the price. Like, what would we do to just change? Like,
Yeah.
everything. Would it all just be gone, or would it just be on to the next thing?
Well, I think the bigger question to ask is why isn't it gone? And there are people profiting off of this, and it's not us. And at the bottom line, the little people, quote unquote, should be the ones in charge. And for some reason, we've kind of gotten kind of grayed out, and they just continue doing so much bullshit up here, and we're kind of like the pawns to everything that they're doing. Meanwhile, they're getting loaded, rich, butt snorting coke. Right, it's my famous word. Like they're just doing all kinds of shit that
she had to.
Right, I had to, but it's like they just don't. They're not doing well by us, and we need to. I'm not saying revolt, but we got to get our shit together
No,
here
we
real
should
quick.
revolt.
Well, okay, I was gonna say it, but thank you, Aspen.
Set
her.
things on fire.
I like
All right,
her.
I think we can burn this mother down.
Yeah.
All right, Aspen, it has been an absolute joy. I cannot wait to get to know you more. This is going to be one of the.
I'm excited.
It's so
I'm
exciting.
excited about the fact that you're bringing the gray area to light.
Yeah.
So let's cheers to the gray area.
Amen.
Right?
Sisters.
Amen.
All right. Cheers.
Design shit. And I'm just here to say that I can wear hats. I can do all of the things.